Hi, it's Ashleigh from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and welcome to Vlogmas Day 3, 2022. This is my third year of Vlogmas. I can't believe it, and we're going to start off with the 12 days of cooking. Now, I know I already did day 1 where I talked about inflation and pricing and all of that, so we're going to start this off on day 3. Don't ask me why. I just think we're all very busy and we could all use one singular recipe that's going to make us a lot of different types of cookies. So this cookie recipe is almost the exact same as my classic sugar cookie recipe, which you can check out here in the right-hand corner. But what I did first was I browned the butter. So in order to brown your butter, you just leave it on the stove until you get a really nice deep color and it smells kind of nutty and caramelized. Then you take it off the stove and you let it rest. And I let the butter rest for a little bit too long. So that's why you noticed in the beginning I was having a hard time with that. You put the butter in there, you cream your sugar together, you add your eggs, and then you go ahead and add your vanilla as well. This recipe is so straightforward. I'll put it down in the description box below, but you can also check out the original video if you really want some in-depth discussion about it. But basically, you take your wet ingredients and then you go ahead and you add in your dry ingredients. Now, I do make a mistake here right off the bat. So other than the browned butter, this is also one other difference that I'm going to make to my recipe. I'm going to reduce the amount of flour that I use. It ends up being slightly dry, and obviously I think that's because we've reduced the amount of butter essentially when we're browning it, so it's not as wet. So I would actually bring this down from 6 cups of flour to only 5 cups of flour, and that will be noted in the recipe in the description box below. But if you're an avid watcher, you might know that my original recipe has 6 cups of flour. The dough did eventually come together, but it did take a little bit more kneading than usual, so you want to make sure that you're kneading as little as possible with this recipe. Now, because we're doing a slice and bake version today, you'll notice that I put it in that plastic wrap. Now I'm getting my egg whites ready, and I do recommend that you just use some pasteurized egg whites. That way you don't have to waste a whole egg, and you can really control the amount that you need. I took that and I put it in the fridge for about 30 minutes so it would be easier to slice. And you can see me having a dry dough does make this a little bit trickier. I can have that like crack right down the middle. So of course, when you guys do it, you will know my revision. So you'll be able to have really, really beautiful sliced cookies with no crack at all. And then go ahead and cover it with egg whites. Now, this is really important if you're going to be doing the sprinkles on the outside, like I'm going to show you in a minute here, but it's not as necessary if you're doing something like chocolate chips on the outside. Really, you're just using this if you're using sprinkles. Now, the key to doing this is using a sprinkle with a little bit more of a coarser feel. You don't want to go for a sanding sugar because it will just kind of get absorbed in the egg whites and the dough. So something with a little bit more thickness, nonpareils work really well with this too. And then go ahead and pack all of that sugar crystal in. Now, what's amazing about this is even just changing the toppings on the outside really does change the flavor profile as a whole, even though you're using the same recipe. So get creative. Yes, I realized what I said about the egg whites earlier, and then I just did it again. But through trial and error, I realized I really didn't need the egg whites. So, I mean, you can add them on if you want to, but if you can skip a step, I say, why not skip a step? And then go ahead and really pack this in here. Now, the things that I had trouble with as I was creating my slice and bake was really making sure that everything maintained its shape. So utilizing that plastic wrap, and when you're putting it in the fridge to firm up a little bit before you slice, make sure that you place it in the fridge standing like an upright cylinder. You're always inevitably going to get that kind of end piece that doesn't look very good and it's a little bit rounded. We are going to squish that down, but keep in mind that that end piece will never be perfect, so maybe you might just want to eat that yourself instead of gifting it. Now, these were not as perfectly circular, and I blame the dullness of my knife, and so if that happens, you can just kind of whirl it around with a cookie cutter and it will get a little bit more rounded. And of course, I'm going to get my toppings ready. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just taking some candy canes. By the way, I've noticed a huge shortage in peppermint candy canes. For some reason, I just keep finding the fruit ones. So I did have to taste a few of them to make sure that they weren't the fruit ones because I like mint. I don't like the fruity ones. And of course, you can totally skip this. You can use whatever toppings that you want. I personally love the idea of mint on desserts, but I know that that is not for everybody. So I'm taking some white chocolate here, and I'm just kind of piping it on. You could do this with a fork as well. I just like the control that I get with a piping bag. And do make sure that you're cutting a really small hole in your piping bag or using a really small tip. I highly recommend though that you're using something like a tipless piping bag whenever you're drizzling chocolate, because if you use a metal tip, then it's just a pain for when you have to reheat everything. Moving along to our other variety, I'm adding some flavorless oil, so like a vegetable oil, coconut oil, either one works, to the chocolate, and we've just melted some dark chocolate chips because I want it to be a little bit looser. It was a little bit too thick, so it wouldn't dip properly. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the butterscotch version. I don't think I mentioned that earlier. These are butterscotch chips that I used, and then I'm just going to go ahead and dip it all the way in. And honestly, these would look beautiful if you just left them dipped like that, and I know some people like a simpler cookie, but you guys all know, if you've been on this channel for a while, I don't do simple cookies that often. Though I will say that actually creating these cookies are rather simple. Now I am going to use that stencil in a little bit, but first I just wanted to show you how I glittered all of these up. So we let that chocolate set for a little bit in the fridge. You really just want to wait until it's hardened. But of course we have those natural oils from the chocolate and the oil that we added, of course. So the edible gold glitter sticks really well to this, but of course you can totally skip this step. I just find it very satisfying. You can also use luster dusts as well, but keep in mind, because you are using a darker chocolate or a brown chocolate, you're not going to get the purest of colors. Now I'm attempting to use the stencil here, and it worked out pretty well. You really just got to pack in all of that glitter. And of course it does work better when you have a flatter surface, so this can be a bit tricky on the slice and bake cookie unless you've done a really good job at making it super flat. And of course we can have the variety where we're just drizzling, and I am showing you how to do it here with just a spoon. Really, really simple. And because there wasn't enough golden glamour, I added these super unnecessary strips of gold on here. You totally don't have to do this. I just felt like it needed a little bit something extra. And this is kind of what I call the poor man's gold leaf, because what it really is it's edible sugar sheets that are just covered with a gold luster dust. So they're a lot cheaper, a lot more cost effective, but they still look pretty cool. And here is the finished product, and these would be a great option to just kind of pop into a cookie or treat box that you're making that maybe just needs a little bit something extra. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading every single day for Vlogmas. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys, and get ready to use this dough again tomorrow.